Sean, you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I have copies of the self-evaluation, and I think I have the copies of the goals, so I think we're good to go.
All right.
So we can get started. Would like to call this meeting to order. That's a special meeting for Barnegat Board of Education.
The notice of this meeting has been forwarded to the Asbury Park Press, the Beacon, Tap into Barnegat, and placed in the foyer of each Barnegat Township school. In the Barnegat Township Municipal Building, it's been filed with the Barnegat Township Municipal Clerk in conjunction with the Open Public Meetings Act. Roll call. We'll have Ms. Bivens, Ms. Cherney. None of them are on. Okay.
No, it looks like just
Okay. Mr. Deemer? Here. Mr. Fedorzik? Here. Mr. Hickey? Here. Mr. Quelch?
Here.
Mr. Zawicki? Mr. O'Brien?
I'm here.
Okay. We have a quorum.
Rick, would you please go on camera for the meeting? Okay, can we do a flag salute, please? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so can I please have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved. Mr. Deemer?
Yes.
Mr. Fedorzik?
Yes.
Mr. Hickey?
Yes.
Mr. Quelch?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
All right, we have an agenda.
Now I'd like to invite Ms. Kathy Weinkoff up to discuss the board goals. Good evening, Kathy.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Okay, you're over to the side and behind me. Okay, that's a good thing. So I have to apologize because Sean, I didn't realize that there would be people attending virtually. Otherwise, I would have emailed this out earlier today. And I just, if you want to take a few minutes and just look through the evaluation, I do have, some comments for us to talk about. Once you've all had a chance to kind of look through it real quickly. For the members of the public who may be watching, while you're reviewing it real quick, I'll talk a little bit because I'm really good at that. Just to explain to the public that this Board of Education annually participates in a board self-evaluation. And they also do the Superintendents Evaluation, which that has a statutory deadline of July 1st. And so after completion of the Superintendents Evaluation, in preparation for our meeting this evening, whenever we establish goals on an annual basis, the board does complete a board self-evaluation. And they rate themselves as a board as a whole and as individual board members. And they evaluate themselves in 9 areas that we feel is important in their role as a Board of Education. And those areas include planning, policy, student achievement, finance, board operations, board performance, board superintendent relationships, board staff relationships, and board and community relationships. It's important for the members of the public and the board to know that we did have 10 responses to the board self-evaluation. 8 board members responded, as well as the superintendent and business administrator. And oftentimes people will say to me, why are the superintendent and the board of business administrator participating in the board self-evaluation? It's important for everyone to know that the superintendent is a non-voting member of this board. And as such, he can complete the board self-evaluation. He only completes the portion that is about the board, not about the individual board member. And a lot of boards that I work with will also ask the business administrator to participate in the board self-evaluation, because he does perform services as your board secretary, and he is present at all of your board meetings. So oftentimes the business administrator will complete the board self-evaluation also, and he too would complete the portion about the board, not the individual board member. So that's just information for everyone to have, including some of our newer board members.
So Kathy, I'm looking at the board self-evaluation sheet, the PDF that has all those items listed.
Correct.
Across the top, vital, very important, somewhat important, et cetera. On the right side, there's numbers 3.4, 3.8. That's the, is that the?
Those are, right, those are weighted scores. So this first page really is for you as board members to look back and think about the 9 areas of the board self-evaluation, and for you to indicate how important you feel those 9 areas to your job, your roles and responsibilities as a board member. And so what we do, you mark them either as vital, very important, somewhat important, not important, or a brand new board member coming on board may say it's not observed. And then what we do is we take those and make their weighted averages based on the responses from the board members. And I will tell you the ones that I really like to focus on, policy, because you really are a policy-making body, and you scored a 3. You all said that was pretty important, 3.8. The next one I like to look at is student achievement, because hopefully that's why we're here, to improve student achievement for your students. And then the next one I really like to focus on is finance, because we really would like to see student achievement be high scores, because we feel that's really vital to what we do as board members, and strike that balance between providing that great education to our students and the finance piece, which is our taxpayers' ability to pay for the education for our students. So those are really the 3 that I really like do a laser focus on whenever I go to look at the board self-evaluation. So then as we go through it, just as a point of reference, when I'm looking at the scores of the evaluation, for instance, when you look at the area plan, you will see there's an average score, and then there's scores for each of the indicators within the evaluation. So those average scores, I like to see them at 3 and above, because that really indicates to me that as a board, you are doing a good job, 3 and above. When we start to see scores 2.9, that one gets to be, okay, but we could still improve. And below, then those are areas that we may want to focus on whenever we go to do your board goals. After I look at the average scores, then I look at the scores for the individual indicators that are here, because we may find some outliers in the indicators within that area that you may need to focus on in the upcoming year for your goals. So when we look at planning, the average score here is a 3.3. So I would say we're doing a good job. And then, then we like to look at the comments also that board members make, because there may be some things in here that we may need to address moving forward. And some of the things that we talk about could be just things that maybe as board members haven't experienced before, or just need to have a little discussion around. So planning, as I said, that is 3.3. I mean, I really didn't find anything in this particular area, although I was surprised to see, I don't know if it was in here or another comment, that you apparently are moving fast and furious through your strategic plan and are getting to the point where you're going to have to revisit and possibly renew the strategic plan. So that's a good thing as we move forward. So then we look at policy in the second area. And again, your overall average here is a 3.3. But then whenever we look at the individual indicators, we do have two different indicators that fell slightly below the 3. And the first one is one of those 2.9s, where, that one, we just keep an eye on that, where the board is operating as a policymaking body. And if you look with regards to statute code, the code of ethics, the board is the policymaking body here in your district. And then about you, the board member, our score for that indicator is 2.3. So that would kind of indicate to me that maybe we have some new board members that may not necessarily be up to speed with the district policy. But it's important for us as board members to be somewhat familiar with that policy manual, because we want to make sure that the decisions that we're making at the board table support our district policy as we move forward. And, it looks to me like, one of your goals, last year really was around reviewing your policies, and it indicates here that you have done that update on your policies. And I do have to say, congratulations, because somebody indicated that CUSAC was passed for only the second time in school history. That's a good thing, and that you received 100% in governance. And that's always a good thing too, because that really does mean that you all are focused on what you should be focused on as a board. So the next one is student achievement. And personally, to me, this is the most important, because I hope that we're all here to improve student achievement for our district. That one was a 3.4, and I really didn't see anything in here in the comments that, set off any alarms. But I am good to see that you are using data as you're moving forward and making your decisions. The next area is finance. And again, that was a 3.3 for about the board, but it appears as if we're going to need, or you're going to need to address some of the finance responsibilities I think you as board members have. And the first one about understanding the relationship of your budget and your district goals. And I would say to you that tonight, the superintendent is going to present you with some proposed or draft goals for the upcoming year. Well, once you all agree that these are the goals that we're going to work on in the upcoming year, you are now beginning the development of your budget for the upcoming year. Because it is for the board to ensure that the necessary resources for carrying out the district goals are included in your budget. So once we agree to those goals, we need to make sure that whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's people, whatever resources we're going to need, that the superintendent is going to need to carry out those goals, are included within the budget. So that really is the tie to the budget with your goals. Understand and participate in our district's budgeting process. And so I think as we move into, or you move into the budget season, then you need to, maybe have Steve do some kind of presentation on how you go about developing your budget here in the district. So that's, a finance training that can be done as you move forward. And then understand and review the monthly reports. So that's the other thing, if you are having or you don't understand those monthly financial reports that you are getting, you need to really reach out to the business administrator so that you understand what's contained within those reports, because by resolution, you are approving those financials every month. And you're indicating whenever you're approving those financials that they really are the financial reflection of your district at that point in time, and that no line item has been overexpended. So if you don't know how to tell if a line item has been overexpended, how can you really vote to approve those financials? And I always use the example, prior to becoming a full-time mom, I was an accountant. I worked in a CPA firm. And I handled all kinds of tax returns, whether they were estate, whether they were corporate tax returns, payroll tax returns, looking at financials, developing financials, quarterly and annual financials for our clients. So I figured once I got on the board, I had that all under control, until the first time I saw the board secretary's report. I had to call up the business administrator and say to him, hey, Brian, what is this that you just gave me? Because they were not like any financials that I had seen whenever I was working in the accounting firm. So it's important for us as board members to really understand what those financial reports are telling us. And if you don't, then make an appointment with Steve, because I've never come across a BA who isn't thrilled to talk about the financials. And the same thing with your audit report. If you don't understand what that audit report is, have a conversation with him. I'm sure he will be more than thrilled to discuss it with you. The next area, and now we get into some areas where I think we need to kind of have some discussion, is around board operations. Now, the overall score here is a 3.1, but now if you look in here, we start to see multiple indicators where we've fallen under the 3. Acting only after giving administration the time to gather information and make recommendations. So I think we need to be mindful of that our superintendent does come to the board with recommendations, and he is the only one who can put forth recommendations to the board. The board can't decide to put recommendations out on the table on their own. Everything has to come as a recommendation from your superintendent. And so if there are things, or if you need additional information, you really need to reach out to him in advance with whatever questions and or issues that he may have you may have, so that he can get the information that is needed so you can make your decision at the board table. Because the last thing you really want to do is surprise the superintendent at a meeting or the business administrator. You don't want them surprising you. So when we do those surprises or potentially do end runs, it does nothing but make everybody at the board table look bad. So I think you just really need to be mindful, especially in this day and age, whenever everything is being put on YouTube or, we're doing things virtually. You just really need to be careful, because I know for a fact that you have a well-run school district. But what happens is when I'm watching what is happening on TV and I see chaos happening at the board table, my perception is, if this chaos is happening at your board table, this chaos is happening in your district. So that tie-in, I think we need to be really careful about. Talking about your method of board governance, you switched. Did you switch from committees to committee of the whole, or did you go from committee of the whole to committees?
Hybrid approach. So we do subcommittees throughout the week prior to board meetings. And then we do a committee of the whole to bring up the most important issues from those subcommittees, so as that we can focus as a board as a whole on those most important and specific issues.
And so if I look at this, you have 3 people who have kind of indicated that that's either average or unsatisfactory. Are there things that need to be done with those meetings to make them run a little smoother, or not necessarily?
I don't think so. I think some of it is on the onus for the board member to ask questions. You have the agendas there.
Okay.
And that's why the committee of the whole was brought up. Like, we didn't want to go to a full committee of the whole. We didn't want to lose the intimacy with the administration for the committee meetings. But I think the onus is on the board member.
Okay.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that in our committee of the whole, we did put an agenda together, and the agenda has become talking points or highlights of the meeting. And there hasn't been as much deliberation during that session as I was hoping there would be. It usually is just the committee chair giving an update and not much beyond that. So that would be something to review, I think, is how to use it more effectively, because there isn't any conversation or discussion about the agenda items. It's just, like I said, it's just a highlight.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Sean. I feel like it seems like we started it for that real, like, let's get it out there, let the town see how we deliberate issues. And a lot of times we're just discussing the lowest stakes of the issues. And we already come to the table with a lot of decisions made. And it seems like the issues that we've had the most disagreements on never actually see the day of light at the committee of the whole. For a couple reasons. I could anticipate one would be, we don't know what's going to come out of people's mouths, and we don't want to show that chaos. But on the same token, I think it's exactly the area where some of the most debatable issues that we have as a board should be discussed. And that's kind of where my comment was leading to.
Just making a note here. Anybody else have any comments around that area? The only other thing is about you, the board member, about attending workshops to increase your effectiveness as a board member. I know it's really hard, with the pandemic. Our convention ended up being virtual, but I will tell you, we have a lot of things that are on the website that you can really take advantage of. And that's going to kind of lead me into the next area around your board performance. And, throughout here, one of the things that I saw within the comments under board performance, and this area really you all need to address. Because your score here in board performance is at 2.8, and about you, the board, all of the scores for the 7 indicators were below a 3 except for 1. However, I want to call your attention to the scores about you, the individual board members. And there is a huge disconnect here, because if I'm to look at this is telling me that you all think that you're really great board members, and that the board as a whole is not so good. So I think what you need to do is really look at these areas to see where it is that you really need to improve. I get concerned, I'm just saying, when I see comments that are made about electronic communications between board members that could open a real nasty can of worms, which we don't want to have happen. And that really revolves around being very, very mindful about any kind of electronic communication that you all were making. Meaning, if either Sean as board president, or Brian as your superintendent, or Steve as your BA sends out an email to the board, we don't reply all. Because the minute we reply all, you are now starting a board meeting outside of the sunshine law, which can get your board into a lot of trouble. So if you're going to respond, the response has to only go one way, to whoever's sending it out. The other thing that happens is we sit at board meetings. Are we texting at board meetings? Are we texting at committee meetings? Those texts are operable. If somebody thinks that you are doing any kind of board business using your personal cell phone, texting. If they think you're using your personal email for board business, the public can send an Oprah request to Steve and ask to see those communications, which means that your board attorney now has access to your personal emails and your text messages. I tell everybody, I don't want anybody to know where I shop. So make sure that you're using only your school board email for communication, and do not be sending texts from committee meetings to people. Don't be sending texts during the meeting to people. Just be really mindful, because somebody can ask to have those, to see those emails. And speaking of training, so we'll go back to the previous indicator where about attending trainings. Last week, there was a really good webinar that was done last week on the perils of social media for board members. It was done by one of our attorneys. He happened to do a dry run at one of my districts before he did the program. That's where I learned about text messages being operable. And I have been doing this for 14 years. I was a board member for 9 years, so it's like 23 years. I actually learned something that I was very surprised about, because those text messages, if they are school board business, there's a records retention time for those text messages and you just can't delete them. Same thing with emails. So be really, really careful. So I would really strongly recommend that you watch that particular webinar. If you go to our website under training and webinars, right now it's the very first one that is listed there. There have been some recent rulings from the School Ethics Commission around social media. And we have always told board members that as long as you indicate within your communication that you are not speaking as a member of the Barnegat Board of Education, that it is your personal opinion only, you should be okay. But what's happening is there have been some cases where a board member has made the disclosure that they are speaking not as a board member, but a member of the public. And the School Ethics Commission has still found them to be in violation of the Code of Ethics. So you need to be really, really careful. So really, if you don't look at anything else on the website, I would say watch that particular webinar and be careful as far as what it is and how you're communicating amongst yourselves. Board superintendent relationships. That one was a 3.2, but we do need to look at the first three indicators here within the board self-evaluation around respecting the management responsibilities of your superintendent. Our job as a Board of Education is to ensure that the schools are well run. We do not run the schools. That's our superintendent's responsibility. Working with the superintendent in a spirit of mutual trust and confidence. I mean, this says to me a lot that we have some team issues here. And maybe we have maybe not a clear line of what our responsibility is as a board, and to maintain ongoing open lines of communications and observe the chain of command. Chain of command is important because the board ends up being the court of last resort. So there's a reason why we have a chain of command in the school district, and that chain of command ties directly to our district policy. So we establish policy for the district, how our school is going to be run. The superintendent and his administrative team then take the policy and they create the regulations for the policy, how the policy is going to be administered in your district. And we want any issues that come up within the district to be addressed at the lowest level of the chain as possible. And as board members, we should know what that chain of command is. So that when somebody comes to us, we can explain to them what the chain of command is. And make sure that when people come to us, we're referring them to that proper level of the chain. So generally, if it's a classroom issue, you do go to the teacher. If it's not resolved, you go to the principal. If it's not resolved, then I'm not sure if you have an assistant superintendent that it would go to. Then it would make its way to the superintendent. And after it gets to the superintendent level, if the parent is not satisfied with how the superintendent has addressed or taken care of the issue, then and only then does it come to the Board of Education. And then the Board of Education gets to hear the issue. They hear what the resolution was from the superintendent. And generally, what we do is most boards will uphold the superintendent's recommendation as to how it's been resolved, because he's following the regulations for the policy. He may come to the board and say, if it comes to the board level, Well, we looked at the regulations and there was a problem with how the regulations are written. So we have adjusted them. And then we move on. But if he comes to the board and says, look, this is the policy, the regulation is carrying out the policy as written. Okay, board, I'm recommending that you look at this policy so we can make some adjustments to it. Sometimes what happens if the public comes to the board member and the board member says, don't worry, I'll take care of it. First of all, board members shouldn't say, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Because sometimes what happens is the community member is giving you one side of the story, superintendent's giving you another side of the story. And when you find out the true facts of once he investigates and we find out the true facts, we may not then necessarily side with that community member, and that community member is going to say to you, but George, you promised me you were going to take care of it. We can't do that. But not only can we not do that, but if it does become something after you've said to the community member, look, I understand, I'm in 100% agreement, I'll do everything that I can to help you resolve this issue. If it makes its way to a board discussion, guess what? You have now conflicted yourself out of a very, very important board discussion because you have already rendered an opinion to that community member. So that's why we need to be really careful about that chain of command and making sure that we follow the chain of command. And if you don't know what the chain of command is, then that's something that the superintendent needs to communicate to you. If it's a classroom issue, here's the chain of command. If it's a special education issue, here's the chain of command. If it's a transportation issue, here's the chain of command so that your community knows who to go to and what those steps are in the chain of command. So I think we need to work on this a little bit. Any questions or comments before I move on? Board staff relationships, 3.4, really good. Although I do want to address one comment, if I can. And that happens to be the comment that I wish we could have more communications with the staff. It's not our role to be having communications with the staff. That follows a chain of command also. It's usually listed in the negotiated agreement through the grievance policy. So we should not be having conversations with staff members about what's going on in the classroom, what's going on, with a personnel issue. That's not conversations that we're supposed to be having. We're management. Okay, there are employees or the district employees that have a negotiated agreement. And so we need to make sure that we abide by those. And oftentimes what happens, I've seen it happen as a board member. It happened when I was on my board. Sometimes what happens in our particular instance, we had a brand new superintendent that came on board, and all of a sudden, he was holding our staff members accountable for the job that they were doing in district. And our staff wasn't used to that. And so as he began to make changes in the district, and I was in a district that went through an enormous transformation, staff members would reach out to us as board members, especially our union leadership, and say, can we have an offline conversation with you? Trying to do an end run around the superintendent and to say to the board, oh, that superintendent, he's making us do this, he's making us do that, can't believe it. That's not our role. It's his job to be able to deal with the issues that the staff are having. And if the staff are having big issues with your superintendent, they have a grievance procedure that they need to follow. that's laid out in that negotiated agreement. We shouldn't be dealing with staff issues. As far as that goes, board and community, you guys are doing a great job there. Let's see if I highlighted anything there in the comments. No. And then looking at identifying challenges facing the school district. I have one comment here that I made a great big star by, just that I want to highlight. And that one is the one that says truth from the teachers about how the curriculum is developing in classroom settings. That's like a big no-no. That leads me to believe, that comment leads me to believe that you all have no trust in your superintendent. He is your educational leader here in the district. And I don't think that he proposes anything that's not good for your students. And because he has a license that he has to uphold. So we just really need to be careful about going to staff, going to parents, because just like I said, there's always two sides to a story. And as a board, we need to be able to step back and look at the big picture. It's not our responsibility to be administering. This is administering to the school, just talking about that. So other than that, areas of focus for your board, roles of your board, roles of the board versus administration, that falls really, there's quite a few here that really fall around roles and responsibilities. What's the role of your superintendent? What's the role of your board? Open Public Meetings Act, Code of Ethics, moving forward. So, I mean, I don't want you to think because I highlighted those areas that this isn't a good evaluation. It is. But I just think that there's some areas that as a whole, you all could improve. So I don't know if you have, anybody has any other questions or comments around the evaluation. Good?
It was very informative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to talk a little bit about goals. So you have the PowerPoint that's here in front of you, and I'm going to go through it really quickly so that we can hit on the high points. So whenever we put this together, it really was all about us coming and moving out of last year with the pandemic and really coming together and deciding what was really going to be good for our students and us as a board as we move forward. And so really what we want to look at is what did we learn from last year's experience? We have to evaluate what we've accomplished, because despite everything that was going on, I am certain that there were a lot of things that were accomplished this year. We need to think about what things are happening that we need to continue with and do an analysis of that. And then preparing for the opening of school, which is really right around the corner. So, learning things, about the pandemic, really is a lot of the things that are highlighted here on the slide. Flexibility and resiliency, I think, is really critical, as well as equity for all of our students. I think we probably all learned about what the real possibility of using technology in the classrooms looks like, but the limitations that go along with that technology that we have. And looking at what our opportunity gaps are for our students as we move forward. For those of us, why we want to really set goals. And we, they're listed here, but a lot of it is accountability. Not only are our goals beginning our budget development, but our goals are also the first step in the evaluation process for the superintendent's evaluation coming up at the end of this year, for the end of June. And so it really does help us plan as we move forward from the short term. I mean, you have the strategic plan, and then these goals really come out of the strategic plan that we had established. I guess that's 3 years ago. Mike?
Yeah, I have one question. So when we do the superintendent evaluation, we actually see the goals he set for himself at the end of the year when we go through and do that. But on the board self-evaluation, that's not there. So like we set goals for ourselves last year, we abandoned 1 or 2 of them. And then now we're not able to go back and circle back and say like, oh, we did this, so we didn't do that.
And so that's the one thing that's lacking in the evaluation.
That's like my feedback is can you change
Right.
the evaluation to include that?
So we are in the process of redoing the board self-evaluation. And so what I do and what we will do is when we go to do the board goals, I always ask you to give me a recap on your goals from last year, so that I know, okay, so that we know, here's our goals. This is what we've accomplished. This is what we didn't do. And then we can have a discussion around those goals, especially those things that we weren't able to accomplish, to see if there are things we want to move forward with this year. So that's always part of what I do as I facilitate goals with you. So we'll talk about your specific board goals and then figure out, do we want to move forward with those, some of those goals, none of those goals? Did we accomplish half of them? And then move forward from there. So I follow football. I'm sorry. I don't follow baseball all that much, but Yogi Berra has a lot of good advice for us. And really, if we don't know where we're going to end up someplace else. And the where we're going are the goals that we're going to establish. Because the goals really do need to reflect our priority for student achievement in our district. And we really hope they're based on a vision of high expectation and shared beliefs and values about what's possible for all of our students. And so when we talk about effective school boards, okay, here's what we do. We have to embrace and monitor both the qualitative and quantitative data. And so I saw within the evaluation that you seem to be talking and harvesting a lot of data about what's happening here in your district. Use the data as a tool to inform continuous improvement efforts and to drive decision-making. Identify specific student learning needs through the data analysis and discuss it regularly. The data tells us the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we have to be willing to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we can't improve if we don't talk about the bad and the ugly and find ways to be able to improve on it. We also need to make sure that our goals remain our top priority. And so that means that throughout the year, you should be getting some updates on the progress towards the achievement of goals. Whether it's a written update, whether it's a presentation that the superintendent does a couple times of the year, but you should be getting those updates on the goals. And sometimes those updates on the goals could be something as simple as an indication on your meeting agenda that a particular item that you're voting on refers back to goal number 1, goal number 2, however many goals that you have, so that you know that that action item is directly tied to one of your district goals. The other thing that we do is make sure we don't accept excuses. We really believe that challenges that our students have can be overcome, and we expect to see improvements in student achievement for all of our students. Our governance cycle that I talked about, so we're really down at the very bottom of our circle where we're beginning. Excuse me, to the, that's not true. We're up in the left-hand side, looking at the slide where we're doing goal setting, the red arrow. That's the start of your board governance cycle for evaluating your superintendent, is to set the goals. It's also starting your budget process, as I said before, because now the board needs to ensure that the resources to carry out the steps of the action plans are contained within your district budget. And then once we're finished, the superintendent will create action plans. And I see in his drafts that he has here, he does have some action items to share with the board. So he'll formalize those, and he should share those final action plans with the board. Then the board monitors the progress towards the achievement of the goals. We usually recommend that you do it once in November, once in January, and then again in March, right before you go to do the superintendent's evaluation. Then we go through that evaluation process, generally started in April, because we have a statutory deadline of July 1st. And then we start the cycle all over again. That's our board governance cycle. Our goals, so we deal with many different types of goals within the district. We have the district goals. These are the ones that Brian's going to talk about shortly. They're owned by everybody. They're owned by the board. They're owned by the superintendent. And it goes back to he's responsible for carrying them out. The board supplies the resources, and they usually fall around program, instruction, facilities, personnel, programs, finance, those types of things would be your district goals that really also tie back to your strategic plan. We have board goals that belong to the board. Okay, this says it's going to go into standby in 45 seconds. We have our board goals that belong to the board and usually revolve around your processes and procedures. We have superintendent goals. These are the superintendent's personal professional development goals. The board generally has no input into those professional development goals for the superintendent. The only time that the board would have any input into those professional development goals would be through the superintendent's evaluation. If there was an area that was of critical concern to the board under the leadership skills portion of the evaluation, then you could make recommendations to the superintendent to include something in his own professional development plan. And then merit goals, those are contractual if you have, if they would be part of your superintendent's contract. So this again really ties into the roles of everybody, your community, your board, your superintendent, and then the staff members. And everybody talks about SMART goals. So our goals are generally a broad overarching statement, but the SMART pieces come within the action plans that the superintendent develops, because those action plans are going to have what are the activities that are going to take place to achieve a goal. And there could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 activities that are going to take place to achieve a goal. We need to make sure they're relevant to our students in our district for the day, time bound. So we're going to have activities. We're going to have who's going to be responsible for carrying out that activity. What are the resources that we're going to need to accomplish that activity? Time bound, meaning when can we expect to see that activity achieved? And then the measurable comes in the indicators of success. The indicators of success are going to let us know how we know that an action within that action plan has been carried out. And so your action plans will have all of those pieces tied to it. So your mission statement, I have your mission statement. So if you look in your packet on the left-hand side, there is last year's goal memo that I included so we can talk about the goals. But your mission is, it says, our collective mission is to nurture and educate our children in accordance with all curriculum standards to prepare them for responsive citizenship and success in life. So everything that we do at the board table, everything that happens here in your district needs to support this mission statement. That's what happens here in the district. All of our work supports the mission for our children. If you don't know what the mission is, I would suggest it does have something on the back here, but you could put the district mission statement on the back of your nameplate so that when you're looking out and making your decisions, it is what we're approving, supporting our mission in our school district. We talked, you all are doing reopening plans, which will include a whole host of these topics within there. And so those reopening plans, pieces of those reopening plans could be included in any of these goal areas. So, we need to ask, and we will ask our superintendent about, he's going to propose the goals, share his draft goals. But as a board, we need to know why he feels that these are the best goals for us moving forward. And then to be able to have a discussion around those goals. And we want to make sure that what we're doing is providing, as I said, that education to meet the needs of all of our students. So if you look, in the memo that was here from last year, Brian, I don't know if you just want to give us a quick overview of last year's goals, just to let us know we're good. You tied them to the strategic plan goal, just as a brief overall accomplished, and we can move forward.
Sure. So, can you guys hear me, or can you guys hear me? Sean, Rick? Thumbs?
Yes.
All right.
Yep, I got it.
So a brief overview of last year's goals. Goal 1 was based on academics. We looked at the tested areas, so grades 3 through 11. We mirrored the state expectation of us for appropriate measures of growth, the same thing that I did for this year for goal 1. And basically what we do is we look at the benchmarks that we put out there quarterly, and we see the growth from the first benchmark to the last benchmark, and that's how we indicate it. And we go over the percentage of grades that either met or exceeded that expectation for gauging my evaluation, and if we've met the goal or exceeded it or did not. Looking back at that, I know we reviewed this during my evaluation in June, but looking back at that, it was a mixed. We saw some areas of real growth. We saw some areas of regression. And then I think, honestly, what the more important thing that came out of that was we discussed actionable steps as an administrative team and presented that through our data harvest that we had on June 15th, last June and June 15th at the board meeting, to kind of show how we're going to address that going forward. Goal 2, if memory serves, last year was investing in our asset. It's a similar goal to what we have again this year. And really, that's something that we will continue to make a priority for the foreseeable future. 3 years ago when I started in this position, a little over 3 years ago when I started this position, we did a long-range facility plan.
And we had our engineers come in and really tear the district down and look at where our deficiencies were and where we needed to fix them and whatnot. We've been very aggressive over the last 3+ years trying to check off as many of those things in the long-range facility plan as possible. We've taken every year we've taken on major projects, especially in the areas of HVAC, and we continue to do so this year. But I want to say, if memory serves correctly, there was about $60 million worth of estimated work for the district to bring us up to where we needed to go. And I know that's been something that I've worked with Mr. Brennan and our architects and our engineers and those various departments to try to bring us up to where we need to be as fast as possible. So that'll continue to be a goal here until we feel like we're in a position where we're just doing maintenance work and not like maintaining it and not trying to make up for some areas that maybe were neglected in the past. One of our goals spoke to technology and most specifically cybersecurity. And we've done a number of things on both fronts, which we outlined again in June. But a lot of the different things that we've done in those different areas to bring our infrastructure and technology up to speed where it needs to be. We've had some really aggressive steps that I've been very happy to see, such as expanding our technology access for students. Last year, we were at a 1-to-1 where students grades 5 through 12 got to take their devices home. And now we're moving into this year where we should have a device for on-demand access for every student, K-2. 3-4 right now, we're deciding whether we're going to let them take them devices home or keep them in laptop carts in the classroom. But we have a 1-to-1 starting the school year with a 1-to-1 in place. And I think there's a lot of kudos to the technology department in that area. And again, Mr. Brennan's office to really back the funding, as well as the outside vendor that we partner with, Pitbull. I think they've done an exceptional job kind of bringing our infrastructure up to where it needs to be, especially in the areas of cybersecurity, and really trying to protect the district from that. So I think we've made tremendous strides there. And then lastly, the goal that we had last year, which is different from the one this year, spoke to our reopening plan. And I want to say out of the 4 goals, I think that's I think we have a lot to be proud of across the board. That's an area where I take a lot of pride in our district. I think, that was truly a collective team effort between the Board of Education, the administration, our union leadership, Mr. Junker, as well as the teaching staff. I think that was really something that, and the staff in general, I think that was really something that everybody came together. And I think we were very aggressive last year trying to get our students back to normalcy as fast as possible, but doing so safely. And I think, the proof is in the data. I think where our district did very well as far as not really having too many interruptions to the instructional model that we had here. We started off with an A/B hybrid schedule, and after one marking period, we shifted to 5 days a week, half days or slightly longer than half days. And then we were able to close the year out with 4 full days and 1 half day for our students. And that's something, like I said, that was the 4th marking period. So that was something I was very proud of, the fact that we were able to move through there in a very safe manner, because like I said, we did so without any major incidents. So I think that was really, that's a real testament to everybody involved there. So that was a recap of the 4 goals from last year.
No, that's terrific. Seems like you accomplished a lot.
Yeah, I think we did a really good job. Really did really well across the board. Like I said, there's a lot of praise to go around on that.
So I'll let you transition in then to your proposed goals for the 21-22 school year.
Thank you very much. So as you'll see in front of you, and I emailed this out a little bit earlier, goal 1 and 2, I replaced the reopening plan with another academic goal. So really what I tried to do here was divide the looking at the academic lens in the district through 2 different scopes. One, really the foundation that we're trying to build here, pre-K through 2. So you'll see that as goal number 2, where we break down specific quantifiable measures for preschool, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. I think that's tremendously important. I think that's an area where, even going back to last year and looking, that was something we were tremendously proud of. Our 1st graders, I want to say off the top of my head, ended with about 75% of the students reading on or above grade level. And that's something that's, that hasn't been the case in this district in a very long time. And when you think about 1st graders and what their educational journey has looked like, their kindergarten was cut short and prior to spring break, their kindergarten year. And then they were fully virtual for the remainder of that year. And then last year, they had to go through, the different transitions and schedules and whatnot. So the fact that we were able to end the year with about 3/4 of our students reading on or above grade level, I thought was tremendous. So we really wanted to look at that as an isolated goal, the foundation that we're building here. So that was a pre-K through 2 goal. And you'll see, like I said, everything broken down as far as the quantifiable measures underneath. And then going back up to goal number 1, like I said earlier, that was carried forward from last year. Again, those are the indicators that are set by the state to show us if they feel like we've, met the standards that we needed to meet. They're actually slightly more challenging or more rigorous than what the state puts forth for us. So we felt like that was a fair thing that we wanted to kind of come back to. In fairness, looking back at last year, I think there was a lot of areas where we have, we could point to and be proud of. And then there were some areas that I was a little disappointed in as far as seeing some of the results, if I'm being fair. So we really wanted to carry that goal forward because the administrative team really wanted to get another crack at trying to accomplish that this year.
For those numbers then, Brian, that I'm looking on here, from last year's academics to this year's academics, on that second bullet where it says greater than 2.85% in ELA and greater than 3.35% math.
Yes.
ELA is higher than last year. Math is lower than last year.
Oh,
Just
I think
so
that,
that
I think
I'm-
that might be a typo.
and
I'm sorry. Hold on. Go
Yeah,
back, George. I think I'm looking at
Yeah,
it.
I'm comparing to page 3 of the memorandum for last year.
So he's looking at the exemplary goals where 150% of projected state growth.
Correct, yes.
This year is 2.85 for exemplary for ELA versus 2.78.
All right. So
And then math was saying 3.53 last year to 3.35 this year.
would you prefer to see them mirror what they were last year?
No, I'm asking, is that change reflected? Is that the state change? That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I
Yes, that's-
wasn't here for last year, so.
Correct. So
all
we pull
last
out
year's
the
stuff
New
is
Jersey,
new
we
to
pull out the
me.
report cards that we get, and then we go by what the state.
Okay, full this stuff.
Yep. Sorry. Didn't,
No, it's fine. I didn't clarify myself.
So those are the 2 academic goals broken down. Does anybody want to have any other questions or discussion on either one of those?
So just so I understand, like for kindergarten, SY 2021 baseline for ELA and marking period 1 was 48.9. The goals is increased by 15.6% from the 21-22 baseline for 65% accuracy by marking period. So you're saying you want to go up 15.6% above the.
So basically what we're looking at is so one of the benefits, Justin, to having Lincoln and USGI and STAR reading is that it gives us a real-time assessment. So that's always the biggest knock on state assessments is that you get the results and they speak to a grade that already went through that grade. So by the time you get the 3rd graders results, those kids are in 4th grade. So you're not comparing like apples to apples. You're comparing like the next 3rd grade is now a totally different group of kids and they come in at different levels. So what we're saying we're going to do here is the 2021 baseline that was established here was just to show you guys a point of reference from this current year. So what we're saying is that we haven't established the baseline yet for all these numbers. That testing is going to happen towards the end of September. So we'll get fresh numbers at that point. So what our goal is to meet here is to, at the very least, we want to see 65% of that grade go, but we're looking for a 15.6% increase. So what I'm saying there is, let's say those kids come in and they test higher, right? Which is very possible because our pre-K program has been doing an exceptional job. Those kids come in at 60%. I'm not going to say 65% is winning. At that point, I'm looking for 75. I'm going to look to continue to push it to higher based on what they have there.
Any other questions for Brian on those 2 goals?
Yeah, so I have a question on the goal number 2. That 15.6% increase is substantial compared to the academic goal of 2.85 or 3.35. Is that just due to the trend of higher growth in the younger ages? Why is the goal so much higher?
Really, it's just based on what we've seen at this point, and we're expecting to see better going into this year than we saw the previous year, given the fact that now those kids will get, knock on wood, a full year of everyday instruction, full-time allotment. And it's a little bit different as far as what they measure. So when you look at like a Lincoln benchmark, that's very, it's supposed to be parallel to the state assessments. So when you look at those, on any given assessment that you take, if a student scores 50% of the questions correctly, that's actually considered proficiency in many of the areas. So those scales go 1 through 5. If a student gets, 60% of the questions right, they're going to be pushing between a 4 and a 5 on that assessment. What we're doing here is we're actually taking specific tangible skills that are priority standards, essentially. These are like the baseline of what you're going to get in those grades. So the pre-K ones are based on a kindergarten readiness. We're actually giving them skills that they should be mastering in kindergarten. And then what we did with kindergarten is we actually pulled out directly from the priority standards that are in from there. And we're, we're isolating those specific skills. So for us, yes, the numbers are higher because we're expecting the vast majority of the students to be able to master those priority skills, because those foundational pieces will set them up for success as they continue to go higher up. But it's really just, based on the types of assessments that you're getting there. And then you're also looking at, how those are scored. And then really what you're looking for is growth in that area. So the Lincoln benchmarks of the state assessment are going to look vastly different than what you're seeing there, because they look at all of the standards across that grade level. And again, it's scored very differently than what you're going to see with those specific skill sets that you're looking from pre-K to 2.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, goal 3, Brian.
Goal 3 is investing in your asset, which is something I talked a little bit about before. When I first came aboard, or when I first, towards the beginning of my superintendency, and when Mr. Brennan came aboard, one of the first things that we did was redo that long-range facility plan. So realistically, that's going to be something that we're going to have in here, kind of as a goal that'll be every year, in my opinion. But specifically, a lot of these things are going to be areas that we're trying to address in long-range facility. And then that's also some of the things you're going to see within this goal are areas where we're trying to now get ahead and try to do more than what's in long-range facility plan. So you'll see a combination of both here. Just not going over every bullet, but you'll see complete installation of the pre-K toilets in Dunphy. That's something that we have to do as part of the pre-K grant. We have to outfit those rooms with toilets. So that's something that's mandated through that grant. As you go through, though, you're going to start to see some areas where HVAC is concerned, or adjusting the controls for the HVAC system. Those are things that were identified in that long-range facility plan as being major areas of need. And then some of these areas are in that are meant to try to improve the student experience that we have here, and also areas where I feel like we can take some strides as far as how the district is perceived outside of Barnegat, right? So some of those areas you'll see there is we've had at the athletic stadium, the audio system was struck by lightning about 8 or 9 years ago, and those speakers and that audio system were never addressed. So at this point, we're trying to upgrade that audio up there so that the students that are up there either through band or through cheerleading or dance, or actually participate in many of the athletics that participate up there, will actually be able to have like a functioning audio system. In addition, we look at couple of the big things that we're looking at here is upgrade the informational marquee at the main entrance of the high school. That was an area that was identified because the marquee there, to be quite frank, is kind of undersized, and that's such a pivotal location in the district where parents are, the vast majority of our parents travel that area, and that could be a really nice opportunity for us to be able to promote things that are going on there, as well as share information out. So that was an area that was identified for that reason. You'll see a video screen at the football stadium, again, the athletic stadium rather. We had we run so many different sports there, opportunities across the board. We've had middle school, sporting events take place there. We've had band competitions that pulled in a dozen districts at a time. And then we've also offered the field to some of the outside programs in the township. So we really wanted to find an opportunity where we could promote a lot of the things that happen in the district at the stadium, because we have such a large population of people that come there. whether they have school-age children or parents that actually come back and still participate and watch even after students have moved on. And so what we're looking to do there is really provide an opportunity that would be, very cool for the students to have that opportunity to have showcase some of the programs that we have at the high school, like Bengal Buzz and things like that, being able to put those up there for a larger audience to actually see. But in addition, really having an opportunity to kind of show off our programs from pre-K all the way up to 12, and having a platform where parents can kind of see what's going on and some of the neat things that are going on at Barnegat. So, like I said, there's a combination of things there that we've identified for this year that we would like to target. And then you'll see some safety stuff that's put in there as well, like installing the camera system on the school buses, as well as GPS tracking on the buses. These are some of the areas that we've identified as far as like safety and security is concerned there. Any questions on goal 3?
Some of these are already
Happening.
moving,
Yep.
happening, right?
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
So was some of this part of that goal from last year that's still continuing?
Some of these things, no, these are not continuations from last year. Last year goals were specific to that school year, but obviously we start budgeting process in like November, looking ahead to the upcoming year. So a lot of these projects were already identified early on for areas of need. Again, one of the things that I really think is a source of pride for me with the administrative team, and in this case specifically talking about Mr. Brennan, is that there's always that like looking ahead. We can list the projects that we're looking to do 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now. None of this stuff, very few of these things at this point in time are done reactively. We've really done a great job over the last couple of years away from moving from reactive to now trying to get these things in a more, I guess, planned out, proactive manner.
And for the new board members, it's important to know that the long-range facility plan becomes really important, because if items aren't included in that long-range facility plan, then you may not be able to move forward with them if they haven't been included, especially the big items.
Yeah, I mean, if I could add to that, George, this is where the cycle of the board goals doesn't fit with the investment in the assets, because the investment in the assets is occurring when it's over. Like we start July 1, so that's why you'll see in here bid and award, and then next year you'll see complete.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's what I kind of figured. I just wanted to clarify
Yep.
that to make sure. Like,
So you usually see part 1 of the plan, like the planning for the investment, and part 2 is the
Yeah,
completion.
gotcha.
It's always,
right.
it's about a half a year behind, because we
Understood.
got to get it done by September 1st, more often than not.
And goal 4.
And then lastly, goal 4 looked at specifically, again, the technology department and the technology in the district in general. So there are a few different things that we were looking at. Like I said, we've been really moving towards that on-demand access for students. What you'll see here is some of the stuff is very specific to the security. That was a major initiative that we started undertaking a few weeks back, and the planning obviously went well back into last year. I'm sure many of you remember. But this is an area really to upgrade the security of the district, some of the hardscaping measures, and some of the ways that technology can support the hardscaping measures. So you'll see a lot of times, without getting too much into the details of this one for obvious reasons, but you saw us put up the interactive TVs, smart TVs. We've been rolling through those, that initiative throughout this year. We look to have the vast majority of the classrooms outfitted with those. That's the goal. And what you'll see here is utilizing that new technology then in a way that provides that security aspect. So, if there's, God forbid, ever a threat in a district or whatnot, we'd be able to notify everybody right through those interactive TVs of exactly what's going on. So again, not trying to get too specific into that for obvious reasons, but many of these goals that are here speak to that initiative that's underway right now. And some of these things are infrastructure things that need to be done. So upgrading the Wi-Fi infrastructure is super important. We've been taking, we last year upgraded a lot of our wireless routing, capabilities, and we're trying to continue to increase those, because as we continue to put more devices in kids' hands and we want the teachers to effectively use them, one of the most frustrating things for a teacher is planning a lesson and then having the infrastructure fail you where you can't then carry forward that lesson. So we continue to look at some things like that. And like I said, these are some of the examples of things in there. This goal is actually probably a little bit more robust than this as far as the specific examples that we're putting out there. But, this is, again, That was something that was very big in the strategic plan. I know that was a major thing that came out of the strategic planning, was wanting to see the district more brought up to speed with technology. And I feel like I think we've accomplished probably the vast majority of the goals in that strategic plan, but we continue to target that since that was obviously something very important to the community.
Any questions on goal number 4? So I just need to get a sense from everybody here that we're going to give direction to the superintendent to move forward with the goals as proposed, so he can develop the action plans, share them with you, and then get moving on them.
Yeah, I have a quick question about that. Now, I kind of feel like we as a board put that in a resolution or a motion last year and then voted them in. Is that something we're planning on doing this year? Either in this meeting or at the September? I feel like years.
I believe last year we did board approve these goals at the June meeting, and then I think I presented the action plans in, I want to say it was like September. Ed committee, maybe they.
No, I think we approved the district goals that you proposed, like in this special meeting.
Correct.
And then at the September meeting, you presented the action. Is that what you're saying? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah, I think that's what happened as well.
All right. Brian, I just got
Go
one
ahead,
last
George.
thing. If I can go back to goal number 2 real quick. I think it's awesome, the breakdown from pre-K to second grade. Is this purely just the administration and the data coaches that said, hey, this is where we're going to go at? Or have the teachers seen this and online this and comfortable with like, hey, I'm the pre-K teacher, I should be able to meet this. I don't think I'm gonna have a problem. Like, if you could just like, how did that work? And I know, I'm pretty sure we did probably talk about it before, but.
So these benchmarks get established through at the administrative level.
Okay.
And then where the teachers actually come into play is they have their individual SGOs that come out in SMART goals and whatnot. So the individual teachers will then get assessed based on their individual classroom. And again, so that this specific number might not be appropriate for every teacher. But what we'll do is when we do the assessments, the teachers will see the starting point for their students, and then they will they'll adjust accordingly.
Gotcha.
So you might have some classes that are a little bit, struggling with some of the fundamentals that may need a little bit more work, that might not hit this like 75% of the kids. But you might have some classes that come in that are stronger, and we might expect 90% or 95% of those kids to meet that goal. But that would be done on an individual. What we're doing here is just kind of taking the broad overview of what we would see for that class.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions? So I'm assuming, go ahead, Sean.
No, I guess just so rolling these into board goals. After what we just went through with the review of our board, I definitely see a need for a board goal around training and on roles and responsibilities. I guess what I'd like to do is set a board goal for us to have, at least 2 training sessions over the next year. Hopefully, Kathy, you can help facilitate that. That would help us dive deeper into what the roles and responsibilities are, and understanding how we impact the district as a whole.
Okay, so when we look at the goals that you had for last year, your goal number 1 was to develop a plan and schedule for board training to increase knowledge of board process and procedures in order to become a certified board. So I think we can continue with that goal, because every time that I come in to work with your board, you're already, like for tonight, you're getting credits for tonight towards your certification. But I think what you need to do is, in addition, if you're going to do 2 trainings, okay, roles and responsibilities clearly from the board self-evaluation is something that I think I would strongly suggest that you do. Last year, if you remember, we did do a training because I met with committees of your board around budget and finance. Steve and I did that, kind of tag teamed with that. And based on, what's going on in your district, if there is another training that you feel you all would benefit from, then I would suggest that, you select something that's pertinent to what you're doing here in the district. The other thing was, just before we talk about that a little more, did you create a community advisory ad hoc committee last year to foster better communication and outreach to the stakeholders of the Barnegat Township School District, or did the pandemic kind of put the on that?
No, we were able to
No.
create one that geared towards reconfiguration. And then because our policy only allows us to create CACs that are specific to a specific issue. Like you cannot just like form it and then like go work on your own. See it. You have to make it. So we did it for reconfiguration, and then we got to kind of a logical conclusion with that right around the same time as the board was changing over in December. And then President O'Brien, you can kind of take it from here and talk about the new initiative with the CAC and how you kind of met that goal.
Yeah, so we did form another CAC this year, and we meet monthly. And we again, as Mr. Hickey said, we set an agenda or what would be discussed, and it includes things like the Edwards School, the reopening plan, communication, and a few other topics. And that is ongoing, and we are meeting monthly with members of the community.
Okay, oh, well, that's good. And the third goal that you had from last year, which I'm assuming is completed, was to continue to review and revise your district policy and board bylaws to ensure they're consistent with current district practices and establish a schedule for ongoing review.
Yeah, and so we picked that up right after that meeting. We had already kind of started that, where we were doing like a monthly review where the director of operations, Mr. Nickel, who's pretty much the primary liaison to governance, they would take one section, and you're talking about anywhere between 30 to 50 policies, and the administration would review it. And then anything that wasn't kind of jiving with what we were doing as a district, or didn't kind of meet our strategic goals, or were obsolete, they started throwing those out one by one or changing. And those were for policies that were more internal. Like we found some crazy one that was people had to pay like $125 per year to be able to use the telephone on their desk for personal use, and just some stuff like that could go.
Which is why it's important to do that every now and then, because it's amazing some of the things you find.
Yep. And so that's been coming to a logical conclusion as well, where like we've gotten through probably 7,000 or 8,000 series. I think we only really have one more series of stuff to go if we haven't completed it. And then the next plan is to continue into the regulations, which our district, the board approves district regulations, where I don't think that's true for all boards. Those are usually set by the superintendent, but we're still going through it and doing a systematic review as a board to make sure that there's strategic alignment between policy and regulation.
So is that something that you want to make as a goal to now fold in the regulations, or is that something you're just going to do as a matter of practice?
I would defer to President O'Brien and the rest of the board on that one.
I mean, my thoughts are that we have a process now, and it should be a matter of practice. But Steve, Dr. Letwis, maybe you can comment on how far away we are from going through all of the goals, or I'm sorry, through all the policies.
I don't have the exact number in front of me, but we still have a little bit of a ways to go. So I think that would be an appropriate goal if you wanted to keep it going this year to continue to go through them.
Okay.
The one for the policy, so we can continue that again this year.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, so we're going to continue with goal 3, which is your policies. And then we're going to continue with goal number 1. That's the training goal. And so what I just want to say to you is, do you have some kind of an idea for another training, or is that something maybe we know you need to do, you want to do roles and responsibilities. Do you want to think about possibly what a second training may be? And when are you looking to potentially have those trainings? You know, and you may want to, we are what now in August? I don't know. The other question I'm going to ask is, are you going to have any kind of turnover on your board come, you know, contested? So do you want to wait until after the first of the year to start your trainings? Or do you want to do one now before the end of the year and then do something after the new board is in place? Because one of the things I would for sure recommend that you also do, and it's something your board attorney can do, or your board attorney and I can kind of do it together, would be sometime after reorganization, to have some kind of ethics training.
Yeah, I think those are two really good points, right? So roles and responsibility and ethics popped up a lot in the review that we just completed. So I think it would be important to have training on both of those items. So those could be our two training topics. I'm on the fence as to when to do it. I think we almost need some immediate resolution, but it is getting pretty close to crunch time. And there's, I think, 11 people running for 3 open seats on our Board of Ed.
Wow.
So there is, there is a lot of, we don't know what's going to happen. So I don't, I think that would be good to maybe take place in early 22. So hopefully January, February, maybe not at the reorg meeting, but at the regular January meeting, or a special meeting in January, early February to start that once we stabilize the board fully.
Okay, so we'll put that here and have those as the two topics. And then what I would suggest is, if you can send me meeting dates, so I know
Is
when.
there any board members that disagree with those two topics or the timing?
No, I highly agree with it, only for the simple fact that going into January, unless one of the 11 individuals wins, everybody will be a first-term board member in calendar year 22.
Yeah.
We have 9 first-term board members.
And
So
should-
I think that
Excuse
really is
me?
a huge.
Yes,
Everyone in the board in calendar year 22 will be first-term board members.
so 3 years of service or less.
Yes.
Okay,
And-
all right.
And Sean and the rest of the board, the only other thing I could suggest is maybe not at a regular meeting, but have like some sort of retreat meeting, a special meeting,
Okay.
just to deal with these sort of topics. Just so we're not taking
Yeah.
up
Yeah, that makes sense.
of a regular meeting.
Right, a special meeting would be best.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes, because I do go in and do training with boards like an hour before the board meeting.
Or that.
But usually what happens is they're a rush through
Run
and we
into-
don't get enough time to have good discussion around specific topics that come up in the training. So that might, whether it's, another weeknight. I hate to even suggest, sometimes I go in on Saturdays to meet with boards. So, whatever would work out, we could do that. So then the other question becomes, we have those two trainings. Is there those two goals? Is there another goal that you all feel you need to work on? Michael, you have?
Yeah, absolutely. We keep flirting with it throughout this meeting is the fact that in 3 years, we're 3 years into a 5-year strategic
Yeah.
plan. And I'd say the majority, if not more of those goals are being met or are projected to be met. If not all of them are projected to be met in the next year, that it's time to redo the strategic planning that I guess, was it Mrs. Harashinsky kind of headed it up and was like really the biggest proponent of it on the board the last time. And I think that needs to go forward this year as well. To just kind of revamp. There's so much that's been accomplished and it's just time to take a good look.
So,
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. So the 5-year plan would tack on to the end of the 3-year or or?
Actually, what we
revise
would
the
end
plan
up
going forward?
doing is, we would do what we call a strategic plan renewal. And we
Okay.
would go through an exercise similar to what we did the last time. There is a fee attached to that renewal. I forget off the top of my head what it is for a renewal, but I can get that to you. Can't remember if it's $3,000 or $4,000 to do the renewal, but don't quote me. I will check tomorrow. And we would go through the same process. We would start off with the superintendent giving us a final kind of update on the state of the strategic plan. That would be we would kick off with a state of the school report and our strategic plan. And then we would do the 3 meetings like we did the last time. Bring the stakeholders together, talk about, strengths and challenges, because we'll have new strengths and challenges. Do a visioning exercise like we did the last time, and then do the goals and objectives, and the goals get turned over to the superintendent and his team for him to develop the action plans. So I can get that information to you. Whenever I send the meeting memo, I can send that information along with you. And it's probably good to do that sometime after the first of the year, so that we can get, if you're going to move forward with it, you can get that done with the action plans, so that when we meet to do goal setting for next year, a year from now or whenever, we have the goals and the actions from the strategic plan that the superintendent can then begin implementing through his goals, and then he'll get evaluated on those also.
Yeah, we did that through the springtime. I think we did like 1 meeting a month the last time in
Mhm.
2018. That was awesome. I mean, I wasn't even a board member at that time, and going through that was a really great process as a parent, just to get familiar with it. So that would carry us through what, 2027?
So if we start 20, we'll finish 2020. Yes, it will take you through 2027. And if I remember correctly, Brian, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. We had a lot of stakeholders that came and participated in that process.
I believe the first.
We did. There was a really good turnout for that.
I think the first night we had like 170, 180 people. And
Right,
I know
and-
the second and third night we hovered right around like 85, 90.
And you did that really great flyer where you did literacy
Yeah, we
or,
did a commercial. We did a video commercial.
no, but then you had it different. You did the video commercial, but you had activities in the evening for the students while the parents were here
Yes.
doing the planning, and that was really successful also.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
use that information in a lot of my districts.
Is there any
And
board members
flyer.
that disagree with, any board members that disagree with making that a goal? To revamp the 5-year strategic plan, of course, based on feedback on the cost and budget from Mr. Brennan.
Reasonable, makes sense.
If you
Yeah,
guys,
again,
I don't know if how this would fit in the timeline, but I could definitely take a look over the next week or so and kind of give it an update on where we are with the strategic plan, like share it out with everybody, and then kind of just give a brief update on where we are with those things, so you can see if you want to tackle that. Does that work? with the
That would be
timeline?
good.
Okay.
That would be great.
Yes, please.
That would probably be my recommendation is, we collectively sit down prior to it. See where we're at, like you said, present or whatnot. And then kind of even maybe brainstorm it a little bit before you go through it, because again, the dynamic of the board's probably going to change.
Yeah, that's why you would do it in springtime, leading into the summer, so that summertime you have your strategic goals done and in hand by the end of the school year. And then Brian can formulate all of his long-term action plans and then break that down into annual goals.
No, I think that would be good. And I can craft the goals so that, the superintendent will give an update to the board on the current status of the district's strategic plan. And then the board can go from there to determine whether you want to move forward with the renewal process in the spring. So I'll craft a goal around that. and make sure, I highlight it whenever I send you the goal memo. And then I'll make sure that I include in there what the cost of a renewal is.
Okay, that sounds good.
And then the important thing would be, once you decide, even though it's the spring, if we're going to do it, that we have a communication pretty soon, because the calendar is crazy. Okay. I am doing 10 strategic plans starting in the fall. So your starting in the spring would be really good, because hopefully there won't be as much competition for my calendar then.
If I could just make a recommendation that we definitely start a little bit before spring if we're going to go in this direction. I wouldn't want to push it too late. I remember before I was sitting in this chair, when it was tried, I think it was too late in spring. It was like May. And I think they struggled mightily with participation because it was getting nice out and there was so many sports and like things like that. But I remember nights where we'd show up and there'd be like 5 people sitting in the audience, and we ended up scrapping it.
And I would say, let's talk about like end of January, February to start. Because then that would get us, if we had the first meeting, that gives you, December, January to generate interest, create your little commercial again, like you did. That was terrific. And then start our first meeting, like either end of January, beginning of February. That would give us February, March, and April. With a snow date, we'll make 4 dates just in case we have a snow date. And that way, then hopefully the action plans can come to you in May. So we have 3 goals. We don't want 4, correct? 3, you have 3 pretty good goals. Training goal to continue with your policies, which are time consuming, and then get the update on the strategic plan, and then make a determination as you're moving forward, and then be involved in the process as we move forward. Anything else? Go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just going to ask if any other members had any goals that they were looking to accomplish. Okay, I think we're good then.
Okay. I don't have anything else except thank you.
No, thank you very much. Okay, so do we have to, there's a public comment portion of the agenda here. Do we go to public session and then vote on the approval of the district goals?
Whichever, we could vote on the goals now and then go into public session. I added to
Okay.
that document on the electronic version that I had here. I added those 3 board goals to the document that Brian handed out.
Okay.
Policies, the strategic plan, and the training.
Did you send that?
Yep, no doubt. I also sent you a bunch of dates already, so.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
If you want to do that, I'll just make sure what gets attached to the minutes is exactly what we talked about.
Be over in like 2 minutes.
okay. Can I have a motion then to approve the district and board goals?
So moved.
Do you want to do them separately or together?
Second,
We can do it all in one.
Okay, good.
Yep. Mr. Deemer,
Yes.
Mr. Fedorzik,
Yes.
Mr. Hickey,
Yes.
Mr. Quelch,
yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries.
Can I have a motion to enter public session then?
So moved.
Second.
Is there anybody in the audience?
Kathy?
Just Kathy? Okay. And I do not see anybody on Zoom. If,
So let me do a quick roll call to get it open.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Deemer,
oh, sorry about that. Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Fedorzik,
Yes.
Mr. Hickey,
Yes.
Mr. Quelch,
Yes.
and Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
All right. Floor is open.
Okay. All right. Nobody in the audience and nobody on the Zoom.
All right.
Can I have a motion to close public session, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Deemer,
Yes.
Mr. Fedorzik,
Yes.
Mr. Hickey,
Yes.
Mr. Quelch,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
All right, public session is closed.
Okay, and then just before we adjourn, I'd like to thank Ms. Wykoff for joining us and helping us out tonight. I've said it before, and we do need to take advantage of the services the SBA offers. And we will be looking forward to doing that this year and getting some more training. So thank you for your time. And sorry I couldn't be there in person. I'm out of state for work, but I will be seeing you soon. So thank you. And can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Deemer,
Yes.
Mr. Fedorzik,
Yes.
Mr. Hickey,
Yes.
Mr. Quelch,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
We are adjourned at 7:50.